can answer your phone.
Oh, okay. yeah. It was, with Superman being around the Batcave and all that, right? It was crazy. Well, once again, let's get on opposite ends of the couch. Here we are.
Yeah, it's close enough.
So here we are, once again, live on tape from a secret undisclosed location hidden somewhere deep in the bowels of downtown St. John's comes in the Library of Graphic Literature.
Yay!
Whee! With my special guest, Dennis Osbourne, and me, his special guest, Wallace Ryan. Dennis, as you all know, is my co-host and cohort on Thursday Comics, as you can see by this distancing bag that we have between us, keeping the distance and all that. And we love the comics, and so every so often he makes it here on time for the show, which is kind of cool, right? It's kind of like a crossover, right?
It is crossover, right? Thursday Comics at the library, so
yeah. So just thinking, of course, in these times of COVID now, there's not a lot of new stuff. Although there was one big announcement, and it ties into what we're talking about today, because today we're going to talk about some comic strip tidbits and Oddball Comics. And the comic book tidbit that I have, or the big piece of news anyway, was there was a strip. I guess it's more a comic book because it was in page form, but it was a comic strip because it was 1 or 2 pages. Anyway, it was from National Lampoon called Trots and Bonnie by this Sherry Flanagan, and it's an absolute hilarious comic strip. I mean, back then it was cutting edge because the humor was really relevant, talking about abortion and all kinds of themes in different ways, and it was sick and it was funny. And I'll be dying for it to be collected all these years, and finally it is, right? But yeah, we'd start talking when we first discussed this, talking about, well, let's try, I said, I'll try to think of stuff in that corner of the room, as a matter of fact.
Right.
And instead of talking about the Library of American Comics, which I do all the time, I figured, okay, I'll dig out a few oddball things, and hence came for the Oddball Comics part of it. But these are more sort of like bits and pieces of different comic strips, not big ones or whatever that I figured. And I even picked out a few oddball little things to give it a shot.
Now, I'm not the most familiar with a lot of comic strips, because when I was collecting going late 80s, early 90s, I was limited to the Saturday newspaper. Yeah. And you'd have your Spider-Man and I think the Herald. You have the Phantom, and you have your classics like Dennis the Menace and
Calvin
Hobbes and Haggard the Horrible. Yeah. You'd have things like that. But actually for comic book ones, they weren't around. They weren't prevalent besides Spider-Man. Yeah. And I didn't know that a lot of them actually existed. Yeah. So when we started to hang out and get to know one another, and I saw this giant collection of comic strips, definitely piqued your interest, and you want to know more about it, because it's a form of the medium that kind of passed you by a little bit.
Yeah, because when I was growing up, of course, the strips were, we had these weekend comics, and the strips were quite bigger too. Right. And I mean, really, the 40s and 50s in some ways was the golden age of, although the 30s too, really. But yeah, early 20th century was the golden age of the comic strip, and I think the reason that I fell in love with them, besides being a big Peanuts fan growing up and all that, was that myself and Jerry, when we first started doing comics, Jerry Porter, we were doing them for our school newspaper, so they had to be in strip form. Okay. So and then once we went on to work at the Muse at Memorial University doing cartoons for them, same thing, newspaper, do strip form. So we'd be looking at all comic strips to see, because we were both into comics, but comic strips, of course, different animals. So, right. We looked at all the old classic stuff to see how it was done, right? But yeah, it's something that's really, although in some ways, with the internet, with the comic screen, it's perfect for viewing comic strips. So it's definitely, I think it's, I think that's the reason that we're seeing people being able to sell books made of old comic strips. You know, like Library of American Comics, is that there are people out there who are getting into it because they see this artwork from whatever strip and like, gotta have it, right?
You're seeing a lot more with the digital comic books. A lot of people like say Penny Arcade or something like this.
Yeah.
They're coming out in a strip format. So it's almost more of a digital online thing now.
Yeah.
Because you can have a quick little comic book and make that a weekly thing.
Yeah.
Instead of like a big monthly full comic coming out. And that's how it's running. So it's almost like it fell behind a bit and it was forgotten about, and then it's come back through almost a digital online market. Yeah. And that's how it's become prevalent again.
Yeah, I think so. The comic strip now, you're right too. It did dip for a while in the 80s into the 90s and all that, but it's that television, it's that screen, it's perfect. It's the perfect dimensions for looking at comic strips, right? And so yeah, I think it's definitely contributed to interest in that. Yeah. And I'll flick through a couple of the comic strips anyway. This is one of the classics, Canon by Wally Wood there.
I actually own this one. I bought this
okay.
when it first came out because I was a fan of Wally Wood through Daredevil and stuff like this. And then when I heard he had a comic strip and it was canon and it was R-rated, borderline X-rated, gorgeous women, nudity, everything, violence, everything in it.
Had to have it.
Right? I had to have it. So and it's stunning.
Yeah. Now the one thing before we started filming, I said to him, I got two Wally Wood strips here. And the thing, and I said to him there'd be something, a secret about it. Yeah. And for something that would be of interest to him, and it's that Howard Chaykin worked.
Okay.
On both of these strips. As a matter of fact, with Shattuck, he said he basically produced, all these. Yes, he even said himself these really quick, terrible pages and all that, and then Wally took them and just inked right over them. And it's true too with Wally. Once someone began inking your work, this I'm keeping back here, because this is not Thursday Comics, right?
And we both know that. Like, I love Howard Chaykin.
Yeah,
Howard Chaykin's one of my favorite artists of all time because he's gritty and he's raw. He has that sketchy feel. Yeah. And he has the weirdest concepts ever. He's very controversial, but everything from like American Flag to Satellite Sam that he did, like his creator on stuff, Black Kiss 2.
Yeah. Well, with this one here, Shattuck, it doesn't look like Chaykin at all. There's now this is their early Chaykin, but the other neat thing about this too is Nick Cuddy works on this, but also and who else? The editor, inkers Jack Abel and Sid Green, I think, do it. But one of the other people who works on this is a very young Dave Cockrum.
Okay.
So this is the one, and of course Chaykin worked on a lot of them. But look at that face. I mean, it's a Dave Cockrum face right there. So I mean, once again, like I say, he was a master of the studio system. I mean, there were a lot of people who worked with him over the years. Dan Atkins worked with him, I think it was. Ralph Reese. A lot of people went through Wally's clutches, and I always liked Wally Wood stuff anyway. But it's interesting to look at some of this, which is more like the Wally Wood Studios, rather than pure Wally Wood. But he's still okay. This is one, and I think you like this one. Speaking of National Lampoon, like we were earlier, this is one of the other strips that ran in it. This one's just called Nuts. It says a graphic novel by Gay and Wilson. Wilson just died recently, as a matter of fact, about half a year ago. But the cartoons, they're absolutely hilarious. I always loved all this guy's stuff anyway, but absolutely hilarious. And this strip was, it was a great little strip, just about this kid and all that, and brilliantly written. And this, like I say, along with Sherry Flanagan, Jeff Jones also had a strip, Idol, that used to run in it too, right? This one I just picked out because Rusty Riley. I mean, this is so unlike anything I usually buy myself anyway. But the reason I bought this is because it's done by Frank Godwin, and the artwork is just bloody incredible. I gotta make sure I gotta struggle not to swear during this show.
When we get together, we tend to swear a lot.
Yeah,
so
that's why we did the show, the podcast, Thursday Comics, and there'll be another one out this Thursday.
We already recorded it.
Yeah.
Recorded it on Sunday. Yeah. So that'll be coming up now tomorrow.
Yeah, that's going to be an exciting one, and the podcast and the video of it, and this, of course, this. How's this? I don't know how I came upon this, but Conan, Volume 1, the strips. There wasn't a Volume 2, I don't believe.
No. Which I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
So Robert E. Howard official license.
Yeah.
So I assume it's still, is it Buscema?
Yeah.
Still doing the art? Okay, I figured so.
Yeah, and it's it's Conan. That's why I had to get it, right?
So, but now is it original stories, or is it still based off Howard's? Or is it cut down versions of the comic?
I think it's.
Because I see some are in color and some are in black and
white. Yeah. It was. Well, they had the Sunday strip.
It's a Sunday color.
Yeah, so I think it was. I do believe it was, specially made.
Okay.
For this. Ernie Chan did a lot of them.
Yeah. So you might not get like Tower of the Elephant, but you're going to get single, probably one-off Conan stories.
Yeah. Well, let me see if there's no prints. Jeez, I wonder, I'll have to look that up, because there's, looking at some of it, it looks almost familiar, right? Oh yeah, this is, yeah, I'll have to check that out, but I was under the impression that it was specially made for them, right?
Okay.
But yeah, it was,
it's still very nice looking though.
Yeah, I can't remember where I found this too. It was.
And that was when Dark Horse had the rights now. But now I'm wondering that Marvel has the rights to all the Conan stuff. They're printing all the classic, and they're reprinting the Dark Horse stuff. Will they eventually get the rights to that?
I think. Oh yeah, I think so. I think we will see. We'll see another collection of these. Right.
The strips completely collected.
And yeah, because it said Volume 2, so I'm assuming there's a lot more than what we have here, right? But yeah. Now, Oddball, what Oddball thing did you bring us here?
I brought.
Here we go.
A weird collection. It's not a comic strip, but just Oddball in general. So I got Neil Adams' Skate Man.
Check this out.
Pretty much known as probably one of the worst comics ever made.
Okay. I'll show it to the here.
So I have 3 copies of it. So.
And one you just gifted to me, which. Now here's the inside.
It's worth a look because it's a hilarious concept. Well, I'm not even going to go into details. It's that outrageous. But there's like roller discos, but it was made in the 80s after all the roller discos phase was gone, so he's well behind the times. But it's a perfect example of a creator-owned book that sometimes they need an editor.
Yes.
Yeah. You just can't give them free reign.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Even something like a creative man like Neil Adams, the logo for Skate Man.
Yeah, it's just like he got all those people who work for him. What happened to all the people at Continuity Associates?
And he has this simple Bulba art style that anyone could have made. It's not unique by any means.
Yeah, so. It's not even good Neil Adams from the time, right?
So, but it's still Neil Adams art. Which is pretty, but the concept, the story, the costume, everything's atrocious.
Well, I like to use, and not in a bad way, because I'm a huge Neil Adams fan, but when I'm talking to my students, it's just, I often talk about storytelling, the story being more important than the art.
Right.
And I said, because you can get away with... like mediocre art and a great story.
Right.
More than you can get away with great art and a terrible story. And herein is the case, right? It's just like a great artist, Neil Adams, no doubt about it. One of my favorites. And he was a constant disappointment after, really from I think I lost it for him around Muhammad Ali, the Superman of Muhammad Ali, which was still very nicely drawn. I'll give it to him that way. But is and ironically enough, like his Dead Man that he wrote was actually okay, right? And then of course, the Green Lantern, Green Arrow, etc., etc.
That's working on the confines of a good editor. Yeah. And someone to relay off of. I think that's Pacific Coast Comics.
Pacific Comics, yeah.
When you're doing that, they'll probably give you full reign, full rights, everything. We just want content. You put it out. And you need people to bounce things off of every now and then.
Yeah. Now it's funny enough with myself, with Paul and Patrick with Black Mask. I mean, we were given free reign, but I mean, I'm assuming they looked at his script and all that. But I mean, in terms of the drawing, the artwork, we just showed it to him, and he was more or less, "Yep, looks good to me," and we went with it.
And it was good.
And it's just like, wow. And it's funny because I often think about sometimes you could be. I tell people not to dismiss it when they see maybe an art style that they might not like, because you might find something that you do in the end really like with Gilbert Hernandez. When I started reading Love and Rockets, I loved Jaime's work, and looking at his style, just even when I first looked at it, didn't really look like my type of thing at the time, and so I'd just be reading the Jaime's stuff for the first issue or so. Then I figured, oh geez, I can't buy this and not read the whole thing, so I went back and I started to read Gilbert stuff and all that, and it was just like, this stuff is groundbreaking, right? It was, then it was like it couldn't be drawn in any other style. It had to be done in his style, right?
It's like, well, we talked about Howard Chaykin, especially his modern style. A lot of people hate Howard Chaykin's work, hate it because it's so unique. But I was like,
what's the matter with people?
He works better in a black and white style now than a color.
Yeah.
That's why, like Satellite Sand that he recently put out, that was it. Black Kiss was black and white.
Yeah.
So it translates better to black and white.
Yeah.
But it's unique and it's different, and that's attractive in a way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's. I mean, even in the late '70s when I think when he really started to blossom, like with the. What was it, Empire and all those.
He did Sword and Sorcery. When he did Star Wars. Star Wars he considered his worst work ever.
Yeah. Well, no, the first issue that he inks by himself ain't bad, but the rest of them was inked by someone who normally I like, I think it was Bill Ray, was it, or whatever, who was, not a bad artist, but his style clashed too much with, it became, he was such a heavy inker, it became more his.
Right.
Right, so it wasn't as distinct. I can see why Howard may not be pleased with it, right? Because what he did, right? This was one here. Speaking of Gilbert Hernandez, this was like a little book here, and this I like just because it was. I can't even show what's.
Can't show any of that.
I can't show any of this, whatever. But it's beginning with Adam and Eve. This depicts explicit sexual content, as Gilbert Hernandez finds unexpected, uninhibited pleasure in the biblical tales of original sin. So it got to be good. But I like this too because it got a nice sort of rubbery plastic type of cover, and it's embossed. It was really cool. Even the spine, even has the lettering on the spine, like the beautifully done little book.
It's almost like a miniature Bible almost.
Yeah.
When you open it up, it's like a Tijuana Bible.
Yeah,
it's just chock full of nudity.
But it's I love the presentation of it too. Like I say, even on having the embossed on the spine and all that is just a nice little thing. So that. But for Oddball now, of course, this is, and you recognize this because you ordered it for me. Is the PS magazine.
Oh, I remember. Yes, you ordered a few of those.
And this one contains a lot of art from these are great. These were put out by the Army, and they were done by Will Eisner, of course, and he did comic strips showing people how certain processes worked in the Army, or how to change your tank tread, or all kinds of stuff related to the Army. So it was I got two so far anyway, which is pretty cool. All right. And I actually bring these into class with me, and use them to teach because I use them to teach what I call industrial comics.
Okay.
Is using comics to make things to explain processes to people, right? So, and I see you have one here now.
This is Bazooka Joe and his gang.
Yeah.
His dust jacket's identical to the old gum wrapper and everything,
yeah.
so everyone should know Bazooka Joe and the short comic strips.
Yeah. And that's
easily recognizable.
That's half the reason that I bought this was, and it does. It feels exactly like it. It even has a bonus card in the back there. But it's that shiny. It's like a shiny cellophane feel to it.
And then the book itself is supposed to be the gum.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I never really noticed that before. Okay, yeah. Sweet. But yeah, once I seen this from Abrams, I think it was. It was just when I see this, it was just like, oh, I had to get it. Just remembering them as a kid. Anyway. Now I think the artist, Lynn Brown worked at it. He became famous. He worked on the Eagle Tower Comics.
Okay.
Jay Lynch, Nancy Morris, she's the daughter-in-law of Wesley Morris, Taylor Morris, son of Wesley Morris, Bob Stewart. But one of the guys who worked on it, he'd done, I think it was Morris, he'd done, so Wesley Morris had done Tijuana Bible, so was someone, I think, who was involved in it. Maybe that's it, it was related to a person. But they almost have a Tijuana Bible feel to them, don't they?
They do. Just, without the copious amounts of nudity and sex.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I had to get this, just the look of it itself. Yeah. It was like Bazooka Joe, one of the. I mean, it's not a real comic strip per se, but in other ways it is, right?
I didn't bring it, I forgot, but we talked about Tijuana Bibles, because that came up oddly. It was an issue of Satellite Sam with Howard Chaykin, and they gave you a free Tijuana Bible.
Oh, yeah. I can remember you telling me that.
Prerogative, some silly story like this, some space story.
Wow.
And it was just a hilarious concept, because it was an adult book.
Yeah.
And they gave you a free Tijuana Bible inside.
I wonder no, I doubt that's in the hardcover edition.
No, I highly doubt it. So.
Yeah. The Darren, I wish what issue? What was it?
It was one of the early ones, probably within the first 6, I think. So I had to look, but it was just a random promotional insert. Wow. Tijuana Bible.
Wow, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I like that. See, and that's one thing with Oddball Comics is something going a little bit. Well, I guess in terms of Oddball Comic, the comic building stories, Kris Ware's graphic novel in a box.
Okay.
I mean, there's 13 or 14 different strips within it, and they're all different formats, like comic strips, printed comic strips, no covers on them or whatever, but and then a little like a printed, like looks like a child's book and all that, and he just did all these different formats within it. Some of them were newspapers. They were all different stories, all having to do with the people who lived in the building that the whole thing's about, and it's a comic that could be read in any order.
Oh, nice.
So you could read one of the little books or whatever. It's really cool. It was just like, geez, and that's what I like about that one. Now this is a cool one too. This is in terms of I guess it's not. Well, I guess it's oddball in a way, just in terms of it's different. And this is the Great War, July 1st, the first day of the Battle of the Somme, which of course for anyone out there, it was one of the great battles of World War I, and in which Newfoundlanders fought. As a matter of fact, my grandfather fought.
Okay.
My grandfather survived Beaumont Hamel. There were 68 out of the hundreds of men who went over the top that morning. 68 were left standing.
Yep, they made roll call the next day.
Yeah, and my pop was one of them. And I knew him too as a kid. I grew up with him, so I actually talked to someone who was actually there. But the cool thing about this is that it's all. I mean, the covers there are like that, but it's basically a story that's told just through graphics, and it shows them getting ready, and then getting prepared, and then the battle itself, and all the chaos, going over the top, the killing, the murdering, all the fun stuff.
So it's all a giant interconnected. It's almost like a full size comic strip.
Yeah,
it's a full size book.
One big long panel, really.
Wow.
But it tells a story going from left to right. It's kind of like the Bayeux Tapestry or one of those things. But it does tell, because I have looked at it and gone through it all, and it's just like, and through my research on the book I'm working on, I was just like, yeah, this does more or less tell the story graphically.
Nice.
So I mean, and it came with a little soft cover book on. Oh, that was on the back, just on the Great War and that sort of thing. So it's of course a nice little slipcase, and you gotta love a good slipcase, right? But I can't think of it. I was trying to think of any other, because while I was waiting for you to come over, I was of course poring over the books they were looking for.
Not so much Oddball, but making it modern Wednesday Comics, which came out a few years ago.
I think we could throw that into the general thing, because that I loved.
It was modern Oddball because they came out it was folded, newspaper format, newspaper quality.
Yeah.
And very unique, because individual comic strips for all different heroes at the time.
And great art in them.
Great art, fantastic artwork, fantastic stories.
Not only that, you had big pages too.
And then they finally got collected in that giant, oversized hardcover.
Yeah, I was living in New York at the time, and I used to get my comics at a great place that was called St. Mark's Comics. And Mitch, good old Mitch, shout out to Mitch. He, when that was coming out, he kept saying to me, "You should buy this," right? And I kept seeing it on the shelf. No, I just getting hardcovers, whatever. And he was down to the last one. And I think they were up to issue 4 at that point. And he says, "This is your last chance. You really should get this." And so I took it, threw it in with my thing, and I went around the corner too. There was a Starbucks around the corner. Where wasn't there a Starbucks around the corner? Anyway, and I'm having a cup of tea, and so I pop it up and I read it. And I don't get past the first strip or two when it was just like, oh, this is freaking fantastic. And when I finished my tea, I put it away. I went back around the corner to the store and said, "Give me the rest of those," right? And I'll never forget being on the subway heading out to Brooklyn and sitting there reading, because to me, they're meant to be read in that type of situation. And I could see people sort of looking over, because they could tell whatever I was reading was like a newspaper of comics, right? And people were, and to get people's attention in New York, it takes something, either it's something cool or someone's bleeding to death on the sidewalk in front of you, right?
It was very unique that I found it. The books themselves really had no collectability aspect, because they were legit folded in half. Yeah. A lot of them had the little bends in the corners, and it was a cheaper newsprint, so it was